Welcome to the Aiming Five Hole Podcast, Stanley Cup Final Preview Edition. How you doing, Ryan?
Doing great, Phil. You
I'm
said that like you
excited.
couldn't believe you said that like you couldn't believe we were here already.
I can't. It just seems this is our 33rd episode of the Aiming Five Hole Podcast. From the beginning of the
Wow.
season to now, our preview edition to now the Stanley Cup Playoff Edition, and lo and behold, we're rolling it back. We're playing it back from last year.
We are playing it
Edmonton,
back.
Florida final. We both called at the beginning of the season Edmonton in the Stanley Cup final. At least we got that one right. We had a little blip in the first round. We both gave up on them.
Yeah, I thought they were toast after the
Everybody
first two
thought
games.
this would be the Rangers versus Edmonton Stanley Cup final. I think everybody in the world thought it was going to be that at the beginning of the season. But lo and behold, the Panthers and Oilers, we're going to play it back, and it's going to be, if it's anything like last year's Stanley Cup final. It's going to be exciting. I don't think it's going to be anybody running out to a three-game-0 lead this year the way the Panthers did. I think this is going to be a really close, hard-fought series right from the beginning. And it's going
Yeah.
to be nasty. These two teams know each other now, and it's going to be nasty.
Yeah, and I think Edmonton's got Edmonton's got enough juice to like punch back this time around. I
Yeah,
think
and they
they're
got
a
a
much
mojo
grittier
going on
team.
right now.
Yeah, and I certainly got mojo. I think it's going to be a great series. I agree with you. I don't think anybody's racing out to a 3-0 lead. I think that the series starting in Edmonton is
Adds a bit of
um
a different flavor to it this year.
yeah, it does, especially because, you know, Edmonton's been starting all these series on the road,
Yeah, this is first time
and
home ice.
so, this is an extra little boost for them. I think their
And we're
crowd
seeing
is
what that
going
crowd, yeah, that crowd and that fan base is just rabid right now. And I think right now, even I'm a Toronto fan, you're a Habs fan, we're rooting for Edmonton.
to,
It's a
oh yeah.
Canadian team thing. I think you're going to see, especially with everything we talked about this beginning of the year. I think everybody in Canada right now is going to be rallying around the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
granted, I'd root for the Charlestown Chiefs over the Florida Panthers, but
Absolutely.
I'm definitely taking,
Absolutely.
I'm being a patriot, and I'm going to take the Edmonton Oilers.
Well,
And
before we get to the Stanley Cup
yeah,
final, we should probably talk a little bit about the final games of both those series. Do you want to start in the West or do you want to start in the East?
yeah, let's start in the East because I don't have a ton to say about
Yeah,
that one. I mean,
they dominated.
Carolina they came out to a 2-0 lead in that game, and then Florida just did Florida things.
Yeah.
And no matter it's interesting how they are so able to beat that tight forechecking game. It's really played at the blue line, at the defensive blue line.
Right.
That's where you really need it's that second pass out of your zone after the outlet pass that Carolina all season long has done such a good job stuffing at the blue line and making turnovers and scoring that way.
Yeah.
And they got two goals in doing that in the game
Yeah.
five, and then somehow Florida figures out how to beat that. And once they figure out how to beat that, Carolina doesn't know what to do.
Right. Well, we've seen it now, all three series for Florida. They've been able to take the other team out of their game and out of their structure, and that's killed the other team. And this
Yeah.
Carolina, they did it to the Leafs, they did it to Tampa Bay. And then Carolina, even everybody, it's just they just didn't play their structured game to what you just said there. They just didn't play the way they're capable of doing it, and it hurt them at the end. They got out of their structure, and then they're not a team that's going to score a lot of goals, and they started chasing games. And when you start chasing games, and they didn't get the best of goaltending at the end. There's a few
Yeah.
weak goals that Freddie let in, and it hurt them. I mean, it's gonna be interesting to see if they're able to roll it back another year. They got some aging defensemen. Interesting to see if they come back next year. Burns comes back for another year, or he hangs them up. He's
They
been
have a
around a long
lot
time.
of cap space.
Yeah, a lot of cap space.
They can spend some real money this offseason.
Yeah,
I
it'd be
think it's going to be
interesting.
really interesting to see what they do.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see who they go after to get a little more punch and scoring, and who will fit into that structure. Because if Brind'Amour is back, they're not going to go away from that structure right now. Um, if
Probably
they,
not. I do see them. I do see that see them finding a way to loosen it up in some ways. And what I mean by that is they've proven that they can win one way.
Right,
In the same way that, Toronto proved that it could win one way
right.
this season. But the best teams learn how to win multiple ways.
Yes.
And that's the difference, I think, between Edmonton this year and last year. And we'll get to them in a sec, is
Well, it's
that this
also
is the
taking
team.
your style of play and dominating somebody and changing your structure of your game overtakes the other team, takes them out of their structure. And I think that's
Yeah,
what Florida has done really well. It's their
they do that very
structure
well.
takes the other team out of their structure because of it, and then they're attacking. They're the ones leading, playing the style that needs to be played, and the other team can't get back to what they need to play.
Yeah. But I do
Uh,
think, just to finish the thought, I think like Edmonton is as capable of winning a 1-0 or 2-1 game as they are
yeah,
a 5-4 game.
right,
And that's different from last year. And I don't think that Carolina is that team.
right,
Which is why once Florida can take you out of your game and make you play their way, you're cooked.
right.
Where Florida could run into problems, and by the way, they did run into this problem to a degree with Toronto, is, you know, if you're not going to force them to play your game at times, then you're going to be on your heels and you're going to give up some goals.
Yep. Yep.
Um, so I don't know. I think
Toronto
it's
took three games out of them. Tampa Bay
yeah,
and Carolina only took one each. So
each. So I feel like, they could have a little bit more trouble with Allison,
yeah,
with Edmonton, I should
yeah.
say. A it's it's going to be a very interesting series in that respect.
Before we get off
but
this series, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, you were going to say something.
but to to say a little requiem for Carolina. Like I said, a lot of positives from the year. They made it further, than they did last year, in the sense that they won a game and could have won two or three more. And they've got a ton of cap space and a very creative general manager.
Yeah,
I think they're in really good shape.
yeah, that'd be good.
Moving over to the
No,
West,
before
though.
we get over there, I
Oh,
want to
before
ask you
you don't
one
want
other
to move over to
question.
the West.
I got
Okay.
one question to ask for you because I thought it was interesting. What did you think of Paul Maurice's request and
Oh,
comments
not to
about
shake hands?
not the coaches not getting in the handshake line? What did you think about that? I'm kind of two minds of it. I don't know when it
So
all
as a
started, because it used to be players shook hands, the coaches went and shook each other's hands, and then sort of stayed back, and then and
I
sometimes shook a few hands here and there. But where did it start in the 80s, 90s, where the actual coaches got into the line?
Oh, I have no idea. My thoughts on this are very simple.
Yeah,
Um, who cares?
yeah,
Like, if you want to make something, if you think it's more for the players, and I understand his reasoning,
yeah.
and I get it. Um, on the other hand, if you wanted to do this, and Brindamore is a buddy of yours, why didn't you text him the day before?
Yeah, I guess
Why
you,
do you
well,
have
it's
to
not
fig?
games
Why do you
because it's
fig?
not
Why do
game
you?
seven. You're not going to say, hey, in case we win tonight. I get that.
Well,
But
you
he
say
should
it
have done
before
it
the
though. He should have done
series.
it in but the other two series because he didn't. In the other
Yeah,
two
like, it's
series,
just
he
like
was in the line.
he comes up with this idea, and then he springs it on Brindamore after the game is
Yeah,
over.
that was
So they've got to
weird.
figure it out on the fly. I don't know. I like Paul Maurice a lot. I think he's got a good argument here. But it was just awkwardly handled.
Yeah. Well, it was also awkward
Really,
because he didn't do it in the first two series, right?
yeah,
So, and I'm okay. The players, the coaches, with his comment of saying, it's the players are going after each other, they're in the battle. I actually disagree with that. I think the coaches are part of that battle. They're sending out the line structures, they're sending out players to play against each other.
yeah,
They're part of the battle in a different way. So I don't mind the coaches getting in that and shaking the players' hands. I do think the coaches should shake hands beforehand while the players are doing it and then sort of get in
yeah.
there somehow, but it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. I just thought it
What
was
I do like
interesting.
about that, yeah, what I do like about what you just said, though, is especially is twofold. One is these coaches, the associate coaches, the positional, like all that, they help game plan against the players on the other side, and so
Right.
they have something to say about that. And a lot of the players have played for some of these coaches or have worked with them in different teams and different parts of their career. Why shouldn't they get a chance on the ice to say, "Hey, congratulations, keep good luck," and
Right. Well, I think his point too also added was because a bunch of other staff, because it was the end of that series and go to the final, jumped on the ice. So players that hadn't been playing in the series,
yeah,
other coaches that aren't involved jumped on the ice. He didn't want to have a line of 5,000 people, maybe. I don't know. But I
understood.
agree. It was kind of a weird thing place to happen. Maybe you wait till after the season, then make that comment and hope
Yeah,
that it moves into next year or whatever. But
it was
it's kind of
it
odd the
was
way it
awkwardly
happened.
done because it was awkwardly done because it looks like he's trying to
Yeah,
impose it
yeah,
in the meantime.
absolutely. So
Anyway,
over to
the
Edmonton,
West.
Dallas. How
Wow.
much can you say? Is Edmonton just seems to, like we said it last weekend, it's bizarro world. They seem to have found a game that they lost going into the playoffs, and they've
The way
recovered
they
from
defended leads in the third period of this series
impressive.
was super, super impressive. At no point did you think they were in danger of giving up their lead.
No.
They just controlled the middle of the ice nonstop. What did Dallas
Well,
have like
that
three
goal that
shots
Skinner gave
against?
up in the third, or was it the third that went through the
Yeah, it
legs?
was
Was
at the
kind of
beginning
weak.
of the third.
It
It
was
was a
like
weak goal.
only not even a minute into the third, so it was kind of weak. I actually did have that twinge going, "Oh no, what's happening here?"
I said, well, let's see what happens on the next shift, and
They scored.
Dallas did, yeah, and yeah, within 2 minutes, and but I think Dallas had like three shot attempts in the last 8 minutes of the game, or something. Like not shots, shot attempts.
Yeah,
It
Dallas
was
really
just
went cold.
they
Like they
really
just
did. Other than
like
Jason
well,
Robertson,
James Robinson picked it up at the end. He scored three of their last four goals.
yeah, but
Ratman went
Rantanen
cold.
disappeared.
He scored eight or
Hintz
nine goals in the
disappeared.
first 8 or 9 games, and then he went cold from there on out, right? So Hintz had one in the final game, I think. He scored one of those ones in the final couple games. But yeah, they just didn't. Jamie Benn was cold. He didn't score in
Got
the
nothing
last
from
two
Sagan in
games,
the end of the
and nothing from
series.
Sagan at the end of the series. Yeah, so it was really just it was an all team effort. I thought it was really weird at the end in the press conference. DeBoer really called out Ottinger.
Unless you have no intention of bringing him back next
And how
year,
can you not? He's the
why
second
would you
best
make
U.S. goalie in the
comments
league.
like that?
Yeah, like I was shocked by how he and then he sort of said it wasn't just the body of work about tonight, it was the body of work in clinching games against Edmonton, period. And he goes, you have this large sample, and he's not wrong when he's saying that, but in that moment, you just lost. It's not him. They just didn't play well. They didn't score enough. They didn't,
Yeah,
so I just thought that was really odd of a coach like DeBoer who's been around for a long time, that calling out your arguably one of the top two U.S. goaltenders in the league, maybe one of the top two goalies in the league, period. And to call him out like that in a game seven after game five or after
I
losing,
was,
that was a
I
little
was.
odd.
First of all, you took him out after two goals.
Right.
Like he didn't even make it 7 minutes into the game,
Yeah.
and then you make those comments after the game when the ESPN guys in the intermission were like, well, they're going to put Oettinger in back in for the third period.
Yeah. Because
Like they thought
DeSmith
that
didn't
was a
give
real
it so
possibility because
well.
they couldn't believe you were leaving
Yeah.
Casey to Smith in an elimination game
Right.
over a guy like Ottinger. And so I don't know, is this Ottinger's Patrick Waugh moment? Does he demand to leave Dallas? And if
I don't
so,
know.
wow, what a trade that will make, right? Because
Absolutely. Send him to Leafs. We'll
he's
take
not
him.
a
Him and Stolhurst.
he,
We'll take him.
he's not he's not cheap.
No
What did
question.
they sign him at? 8 million? What was
I
it?
think he's
Can't
up there.
remember.
He's definitely up there. But yeah, and look at I think Edmonton too. To your point, other than the defensive side, they started getting scoring from up and down the lineup.
My God, look at their
McDavid scoring and
other than McDavid,
Draisaitl
who scored?
scoring. Skinner even scored. Like Skinner gets into his second game of playoffs,
Skinner
he
and
scored.
Yanmark.
Arvidsson scored after Janmark scoring. Connor Brown was scoring with their line. Hyman was scoring. Hyman's going to be a big loss for them coming into the playoffs,
Yeah,
coming into the finals.
that's the big X factor in the final, right?
But then you look at this game. He's out, and they had had every excuse to go into game five and lose in Dallas, losing
Hmm.
Hyman, your wrecking ball guy. And to your point, Skinner and Arvidsson played really well, and they both scored.
Yeah.
And the team just rallied. And I said that we talked about this earlier in this playoffs. This team all of a sudden feels like they're on that roll. They're on that.
It's like destiny.
They're just. Yeah, I don't want to say that because I don't want to jinx this thing. But I said this. We've said it a few times that Draisaitl and McDavid are willing this team to the final. Now, can they take them over that edge? The other thing they did in this game at the end of the game is they grabbed the cup.
Ah, come on, it's superstition. Maybe they were
Oh,
just
we're
trying
hockey players.
to.
We're superstitious by
I know, but
nature.
they touched it last year and lost in
No,
seven.
they
So
didn't.
maybe they thought,
They didn't touch it.
They
because
did.
that was
That's
they
right.
didn't
They
touch
didn't
it.
touch it
So
last year.
it
They
was
lost in
interesting
seven.
because they lost in seven. They didn't touch it this year. So McDavid said, "Why not try something different?" The
Yep.
Panthers, the first year went to the final, touched it, lost. Last year didn't touch it and win. This year didn't touch it. So it'll be interesting to see what scenario. I know it's all wacky sports, nutty psychiatry type BS, but it's we're
Well,
that
as
kind.
long as you recognize it as that.
Oh, look, I still just play men's league. Are you not superstitious how you put your equipment on and how you go on the? I'm still am. I'm not playing competitive any anymore,
Yeah,
but
my
I'm
one
still.
superstition before I go on the ice is check my feet to make sure I took the guards off my skates. Other than that, there's no superstition.
That's so funny when people do that. But I still put my equipment on the same exact way every time. Every time. I do the
I
same
do
thing
that
when they
so I
get
don't
on
have
the
to think
ice.
about it. It's just
Yeah,
muscle
it's just
memory.
habit, right? So I just think, well, anyways, doesn't matter. This is going to be a fun
Okay.
series, but I think we also have to talk a little bit about the Florida Panthers and how they've, at the deadline, we talked about this a few times. Bringing in Marchand and Seth Jones
Seth Jones.
has just those two have just fit in so well to that team. Unfortunately, to my dismay, they fit in so well and fit into this team, and they've brought a dynamic. Seth Jones is just being that other. He's filling that Montour spot from last year
Yeah, except he's
offensively, but
filling the
he's but
Montour.
he's but he's also better
He's also,
defensively,
yeah, he's
right?
pounding people like in a
Yeah,
way that Montour doesn't do.
yeah, and Marchand's just doing. We said it in the
Marchand
regular
thinks.
season. Marchand was looking slow, was looking old, wasn't doing anything in Boston. All of a sudden, he seems like he's got a resurgence. He's playing with vigor. He's hitting everything that moves. Sometimes not the way you want him to. He's scoring. Uh,
Well, I would say the thing that's impressed me the most about Marchand is two things that weren't happening earlier in the season when he was with Boston, and even shortly after the acquisition,
yeah.
when he was kind of hurt
It was
back
yeah, he
then,
was injured. He didn't play right away
but
for them.
but he wasn't causing turnovers in the in the offensive zone to keep plays alive, and he wasn't the zone entry facilitator that he normally is. Like he can bring the puck in and find some quiet space and then find a way to wait for it for people to join him off the rush and find the late man. Like he's a really good zone entry guy and always has been and didn't have that earlier in the season.
But it's
And
also
I've
sorry, go ahead.
noticed in the last two rounds of the playoffs, he's filling that role again.
Yeah,
And the fact that he can do that on a third line,
yeah.
like that's really impressive.
Well,
That's
I think
three really good lines.
no, absolutely, and I think the he also finds a way when the pressure ratchets it up. He's there, right? They're also playing a style that he enjoys that they weren't playing this year in Boston.
Yeah.
And I think that the playoff style suits his game. Bang, muck it up on the boards, throw everything at the net, that stuff after the whistle. That's his type of game, and he seems to thrive and enjoy it.
Yes.
And you don't play that in the regular season as much. And Boston wasn't playing that type of game anymore because they weren't built that way. But this Florida team, as we talked about it all year long, they're four lines of everybody does everything, right?
They're a
They
very deep team.
deep team, and they you go up, you can roll those four lines, and you're confident they're all going to get scoring opportunities, they're all going to defend well, and they're all going to play a 200-foot game. And there's very few teams that are built that way, right? And how long can they keep this together? But Zito's done a great job in building a
Yep.
team that just fits and fits
Yeah.
this style and fits the playoffs.
Okay, so before we
Now you got
go
world-class
to
goaltending back there too, helps.
before we go to our, what's going to decide, what are the key factors for the final? I want to say one last word because the final will all be broadcast on TNT. So we're done with ESPN for this season,
Thank
and
God.
thank God we are.
Bye bye
We
PK.
don't need to rip on Mess anymore. Poor Mark Messier is just he's not up to the job. But anyway, I have to say,
I didn't think TJ Oshie was that bad.
no, he's pretty good. He's
He was a
pretty
little
good.
quiet. He was a little
Yeah,
understated because that was the first time he was doing this, but I didn't think it was that bad.
yeah,
But I know you want to say something nice about
yeah.
somebody.
I want to say something nice because we've ripped on him all season about PK Subban. He did a fantastic job breaking down some of the big plays in the first period after the first intermission last night, and he especially breaking down what happened on Draisaitl's power play goal was really clear, really concise, didn't have the floral language and uh, it was just very solid analysis, and I was really impressed. And then we get to the second intermission, and he goes back to his virtual reality goggles, and it was a
Dude,
disaster. But
just a waste.
before we say goodbye to Steve Levy, Mark Messier, and PK Subban, PK, you came this close to redeeming yourself last night, and then you went ahead and screwed it up.
It's going to take more than that to redeem them for me. I'm so
Yep.
glad that they've got. I mean, I enjoy the TNT panel. We've talked about it, and I've really enjoyed Rick Bonus on that panel. I think he's added a great, a
Yeah,
great
he's going to be
level
great
of
for the
experience. It's gonna be
finals.
fun.
They're going to be great for the finals.
But to go
Okay.
back to your point, so the biggest factors both sides, I think,
Yep.
for Edmonton, and we talked about this before as well. I think the rest that they're getting this year in the playoffs and this later start that we're expecting. Now, this would have been the natural start next Wednesday because if the Edmonton series, Dallas series had gone to seven, it would have finished Monday. I would have thought they would have, because both series would finished early, I thought they would have brought it forward, but there's probably a NBA TV um, building availability issue, so we'll let that all slide. But I think the rest is going to benefit Draisaitl and McDavid. They've played so much hockey; they're sucking up a lot of minutes, and now you got you got Ekholm back on Edmonton's defense. You're
Yep.
not going to get um, uh, um, Hyman back, but you could get Connor Brown back, who could be really important to them, banging in a big body again. And they could get healthy and they get rested. And I think that rest and healthy for Edmonton is going to be good. What I worry about is we just talked about this. They got on a roll and they got the mojo going. They got this oomph going. Like, is this going to derail them a little bit? Right. And you hope not. But if they can play the style they are now, to your point, defend well, continue to muck it up and get scoring across multiple places, I think they're going to have a good series.
Yep. So my first factor is the third line. Can Edmonton's third line play with Florida's third line? Because it's not just Zach Hyman leaving,
It's what it
right?
does to the rest of the
It's
lineup.
what it does to the rest of the line. And now you've moved Corey Perry up to the first line. So you've got a first line of Nugent Hopkins, McDavid, and Corey Perry. Your third line now has to compete with, Marchand, Luostarinen,
Well,
like,
a lot will depend on if you get Brown back, because Brown goes back to that line, and he
yeah,
could be because then you don't have Skinner or maybe not even Arvidsson. One of those two is going to be put back into the press box, and Connor Brown will be a leveling factor for that line.
perhaps. By the way, I keep Arvidsson in. I think he had a
Yeah.
really strong game. I
I
thought
also
both
think he
he and Skinner.
bangs. I think he's a
Yeah,
bit of a water bug out there and he bangs a little bit more and is a
yeah.
little more durable in that way. And you can flip those two out interchangeably if you wanted
Oh,
to.
yeah. By the way, him
Uh,
battling in the corners in the third period with Bischel,
yeah,
who outweighs him by 50 pounds and is like 7 inches taller than him,
yeah,
was pretty impressive.
yeah.
Um, so the third line, I think, is my first X factor. Second X factor is Bob versus Skinner. Just
The
don't know how
advantage.
that's going to turn out. I think Bob, you know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Skinner is a little bit more of a wild card.
And again, I think this break, does that hurt Skinner? He's on a roll again. He's got his mojo back. He's feeling it, right? Does that
Well, he starts at home. I
Yeah,
think that
that's going to be a
helps.
huge factor, I think, for Edmonton in this series. Starting at home and having that wild crowd going nuts, I think it's just going to energize them.
Yep. Yeah. And I feel like if Edmonton can play the the more Edmonton can play with a lead, the better off they're going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, that
No, I
sounds
think.
so self-evident and stupid, but
No, but I think
they
that with
are.
the Panthers, I think that's a great comment because the Panthers are that team. Once they get up on you, it's tough to come back because they just clamp down. They've got, like we just talked about, they have four lines they can roll, and they're all good
Yep.
defensively. Their best offensive player, Barkov, arguably, is their best defensive player forward,
Yep.
right? So that's tough to beat when you've got a player that plays that 200-foot game and is that good, right? And whatnot. I think for Florida, their keys are they just got to keep doing what they're doing. They got to keep winning the puck battles, keep playing well in front, keep shutting things down, keep disrupting the other team, get them out of their style. If
Yeah.
they
The
can do
trick
that,
though, the trick though for them, and they did it in spurts last year, but they overplayed it at some like. you want to get under McDavid's skin, but you don't want to piss him off.
Yeah, I just
Once he
right now
finds that gear,
he finds a gear, and I think to your point, you just said this that starting at home, that crowd, he wants this thing so bad that
but he seems calm.
he seems he's in that cerebral space right now, and I think
Yeah.
Draisaitl, they're both in that space together. It's incredible. Like it's going to be Panthers trying, to your point, trying to take him out of that. How do they do that? Bang him, hit him. I don't think you necessarily want to. You can't. You have to let the. You got to try and not allow McDavid to beat you. The same time, you got the other guys have got to. The other guys are. You got to be careful of allowing the other guys to try and be. If you try and shut down McDavid and Draisaitl, if the Oilers keep scoring, they're great. But if you can shut them down and the rest of the guys aren't scoring the way they are right now, then that's going
Uh,
to be the problem for Edmonton, right?
yeah.
So, um, and if Bob's having a great series. So, okay, so
What's your call?
um, I have to stick with what I said from the beginning of the year. I originally said when we thought it was going to be Edmonton, New York. I thought we would start on the road. I called Edmonton at 6, sticking with it. Unfortunately, that means they're going to win it in Florida. I'd love to see them and win it on Canadian soil. But I think the Cup's coming home, and it's coming home in 6, and Edmonton's going to take this.
All right. Well, I'm going to say, consistent, like I said before the start of the year, and I've been very consistent all through that Edmonton was going to continue to win. Wow, you're not calling me out.
I'm shaking my head. People can't see it, but
People
you
can't see you
gave up
shaking your
on.
head.
At least I
Uh,
came back to them in the last 2 series after the first one. You called them out in all three. You didn't think they were going to
I've
win any of the three.
I've said at least 67 times this year that Edmonton was going to win the Stanley Cup. I am going to pick them, but because you picked them in 6 and are mulling or ruining the idea that they would win it on the road, um, I am going to uh, I am going to pick them in 7
Yeah,
and win
that's
it
a
on
great.
home ice.
I'd love to see them win it at home. I just don't think they can do it in 5. So if it ends up being in 7, great. Um, but okay, so depending, let's just not say who should we talk before we go here, talk about Conn Smythe
If it's
offensive
if
point.
it's if it's if Edmonton wins, it's McDavid. If Florida wins, it's likely McDavid on the losing team again.
I see. I don't think they'll do that again.
I think it would be so great if they did
Yeah,
it
if they
again.
could,
What
they
an
could.
absolute
If it
spit
goes
in the
7,
face
that could
of
happen. It could happen. I actually going to say something that's controversial and never will happen. What I would like to see happen if Oilers do win this thing, I think it should be go to McDavid and Draisaitl. I
co-winners.
think it should be co-winners. If they win it, it should be co-winners because they have dragged this team to this
Yeah.
place
Yeah.
together. And they don't
How does
one or the other doesn't do it on their own. They have dragged this
agreed.
to the thing. So and if Florida wins it, I think there's 3 options. I think Bobrovsky is a great option, although he stumbled at the beginning of the first series, or the Leaf series. Um, you can't argue if it's Barkov. Like Barkov has had a great playoff, 200-foot game, played solid defensively, solid offensively, great on the draws, and quietly, even though Bennett didn't have a great series against the Leafs, somehow he's leading the playoffs in goals, and
He's
scoring important. To your point, you said earlier, scoring important goals. He
very
could be one of
important
the 3 of
goals.
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But who cares? I'd like to see Edmonton win it, and I would love them for the first. I don't. We should research this. I don't think there has ever been a dual winner, but if they're going to do it, this would be the year to do it, and it should be Draisaitl and McDavid picking that thing up together.
Absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't argue with it. I just don't know if it could happen.
Yeah, I don't think it could happen, but I think that's the way it should happen.
All right. Any
Cool.
final notes before we sign off?
It's gonna be fun. Let's get it going. I'm excited. The next couple of days. I'm anticipating. I don't know what to do with myself the next few nights with no
I'll tell you what you
hockey.
need to do. Well, you should fly to Europe with your family
I
and
am going
figure
to
out how
fly to
to
Europe.
keep your sleep. So you should fly to Europe with your family and figure out now how you're going to adjust your sleep schedule so that you can
Oh,
kind of be on time in Europe, but you're definitely awake to watch these
I'm
games.
definitely going to be watching these games. There's no way I'm not going to find a way to watch the first 3 games. There'll only be a way for the first 3.
Okay.
It's going to be so fun. So we'll also do our mid-round update next weekend, um, and I'll be in Europe doing that from there. But I'm looking forward to
Excellent.
this. Looking forward to our chanter back and forth. Go Oilers! Go Canada, go Oilers. It's going to be a fun series. And to replay it all back last year, it's going to be some fun. So let's do it. Let's get it
Awesome,
on.
man. All right.
All right. You
Take it
have a great
easy.
weekend. We'll talk to you from, I shall be in Paris by this time next weekend. See you there.
How about you? All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.